Happy morning,
Sure.
all. Thank you all for taking time and joining this webinar. I'm grateful to you all. Just a quick intro on Raksha Technologies. Raksha Technologies is a pure play cybersecurity system integrator. We have pan-India presence, having sales and support operations across the country. We have physical offices covered in south of India. We are a ISO 27001 and 9000 certified company. We have a strong partnership with world-leading security brands. We have been continuously awarded by major OEMs and leading trade magazines for our excellence in delivery. We are having a team of 90 plus happy colleagues, and Raksha is a joyous place to work with the least retention rates and 97% CSAT score. This is a brief introduction of Raksha and what started as a company in year 2000 just by providing managed antivirus, and then we have branched out to other areas of security operations, which include cloud security, data security, identity and access management, security operations and incident response, compliance risk and governance, network and infra security, email and messaging security, web security, availability and infra solutions, and technical services. These are the various broad aspects which we cover as an organization. This is the short journey about Raksha as a company. And we are a strategic partner to Ilantus, and Identity and Access Management is a new division in Raksha where we wanted to take forward understanding the need of identity and access management as a subject. Like identity and access management is always considered a complex thing, and it is adoption rates what we have experienced as an organization being in the cybersecurity space for past 20 years. Like we had our own understanding of the concept. People have limited themselves to providing secure authentication or multi-factor authentication to the VPN infra and to the limited resources. And that journey doesn't is complete with identity governance and other facets that has to be really considered. So considering the market opportunity and the need for identity and access as a solution, considering the predictions by cybersecurity ventures where next year, like the global cybercrime damage cost is going to be still 6 trillion. That is what the projections are. And considering all these alarming statistics which we see, like where identity theft is the major culprit behind all these damages, organizations have understood the need to have a proper identity and access management solutions in place. I request Mr. Binod Singh, Chairman of Ilantus, to brief all of us and help us in taking the journey forward.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be in this webinar, and I would consider my job successful in this webinar if I'm able to give you a sense of the deeper side of identity and access management, and also why is it needed so much? What are the complexities? Those of you who are very aware of identity and access management would know that some parts, at least some parts of identity and access management, is considered to be also sometimes complex. So why is it considered complex? What has really happened historically? And how this complexity can be taken care of and avoided. All those things I'm going to handle in this session. And as I said, I would be successful in this session if I'm able to give you a sense of not just the IAM, I'll call it IAM from now on, domain, but also a sense of how one can benefit from it as a customer organization. Before I go back to talking about what made IAM complex, let me talk a little about what is identity and access management's relevance in today's world and in today's corporate environment. So as the name itself suggests, identity and access management is all about the identity of or digital identity of the users. And the user in today's world can be a physical user, a human being. It could also be a device. It could be an IoT device. It could be other kinds of device. It could be a network device or whatever we are talking about. So all the different assets that an the IT assets that organization has, as well as the user. Each one has an identity, as we all know. And this identity needs to be created when somebody starts the journey in a corporate organization. So if I join a company as a manager, then my first records go into the HR system. From there, it needs to be pulled in uh, to give me the logins that I need to access various applications. Obviously, I'm not allowed to access all the corporate assets. I should be allowed only to access that much, which my role in the organization requires me to. So first, my identity has to be created. Uh, after I've been entered into the HR system, and then I need to be given access to the various assets in the organization that I need to access as a part of my journey in the organization. As we all know, this journey can change. I may be the assistant manager finance today. I may be transferred to another department tomorrow, where my role could become quite different from what it is today. And then in due course, I may also get a promotion. So if once I get promoted, again, the accesses that I'm supposed to have will change. And the old accesses that I have, some of them will not be applicable anymore. So I need those accesses need to be taken away from me. I may also we may get transferred from one location to the other, in which case, again, some of the accesses would change. Common example is the distribution list. So if I move from Bangalore to Kochi, then I should be in the distribution list of Kochi, no more in the distribution list of Bangalore. If I'm going away on vacation for, let us say, 3 weeks, then my job has to be done by somebody else. And all my accesses, at least most of them, need to be delegated to somebody else who's going to do my job during this period. Somebody is going to get my access. Therefore, he needs also to, the organization need to have proper auditable records that such and such person was on leave during this period and somebody else has accessed and done things, made changes, read records, transferred files, and all those things have been done by somebody else and not the gentleman who is in that position on a permanent basis because he was on leave during that period. So the accountability of that access needs to be very well established for safe working of the organization. And this is one of the most critical security breaches in organizations. So what does a hacker try to do? Essentially tries to pose as somebody else and get hold of the access of somebody else. That's the most common kind of end result of any hacking, a large number of hackings that happen in an organization. Without getting hold of the access, how would you really get hold of the data or the information that is there in the system? That is one aspect that identity and access management completely takes care of. So if I may have to talk of a scenario, from the time a person joins an organization and his records are available in the HR system, a typical identity management system will pull automatically all his records from the HR system and put it in the identity management directory. Once that has been done, which takes a second to do, then his AD account in today's world, Active Directory is a common source, is a common directory for most of the organizations. His credentials have to be created in the Active Directory. The third step that happens is once that is taken care of, then the person needs to be given access to various applications that he needs to access as a part of his role. So all these things take time in a manual system because in order to give him access, authorizations are required from his manager. If it's a banking application or some other SAP application which is critical, then he needs to A number of people need to authorize his access before he can be given an access. And even after authorization, the IT department has to be given the instruction to create that account or that access for him. So all these things are automatically taken care of by an identity and access management system. In addition to that, all the changes that would occur to the employee during the period of his tenure in the organization, that also is taken care of by the identity management system automatically. And not only that, but everything that the employee does in the system in terms of accessing data, information, changing information, overwriting information, everything gets captured as to who has done it, at what time he has done it, and what has he done. So that's one very, very important aspect of the full-blown identity and access management system. The other important aspect is what we call the access governance. So it is not only enough to put these systems and processes in place, but also know in an organization at any point in time as to who has access to what, who authorized that access, what is he doing with that access, and does he still need that access? So these are four very important questions that need to be answered and be available to be answered in the organization at any point in time. If you look at a security audit, if you look at a compliance audit, these are the questions where most of the audits fail. Because when the auditor comes and he starts looking at who has access to what, he finds that out of 100 accesses, there are 5 accesses that are held by people not in that role anymore. So they should not be having that access anymore. And those of you who have dealt with security audits or who come from that area would know what I'm saying, how difficult it is to pass audits when it comes to the access management aspect. The other part of identity and access management is about who is accessing what. So we all know that passwords, user IDs are two simple things that we use generally to access into applications. But different applications may have different user IDs and different passwords. And therefore, to be able to seamlessly access, login into applications is not that simple because the passwords keep on changing. The user IDs, depending on if you're accessing an SAP system, it has its own protocol for creating user IDs. It would not perhaps accept AD user ID. And because SAP is a different world altogether, it could be a banking application where it could be a different user ID and password you'll have to use. And all that makes life very, very complex for the user. It also opens the organization to breaches because if you have to remember so many passwords, so many IDs, then you will end up doing things using the same ID password for different things. And therefore, you are making the accesses very vulnerable to hackers and all that. So that's another thing which in the form of things like single sign-on, two-factor authentication, password management, all those things are automated by an identity management system. In fact, 80% of the customers start with this aspect, and then they go to what I was talking about, the access management and all that. So it depends on how you would like to start your journey. What are your pain points? And Raksha, along with Ilantus, would be very happy to help you determine that because we have been doing this for 20 long years, and we know exactly how to advise you on your journey into an identity and access management. It need not start very big, by the way. It can start in a very small way and then grow over a period of time to cover many other areas. Two-factor authentication, passwordless authentication, these things are being talked about a lot today. And all these things are a part of identity and access management. So with that background, let me now come to talk a little about why some people say that identity and access management, it can be complex. So for knowing why it is complex today, one needs to go into a bit of a history. I've been in this domain for 20 years. I became a part of this domain in the year this domain was formally, flagged off in the world. I had the opportunity to do some work in India, to live and do a lot of work in the US region, worked with close to 100, maybe more customers very, very closely, and definitely look at the situation and consulting to at least 200 customers in the world. While going through this journey of 20 years, I realized why identity and access management is supposed to be, some parts are supposed to be complex. So the first thing that happened was in stage one. I'm going to split the story into a couple of stages that happened in our industry. You won't read this in any book because this is purely experiential, and those who have been in the journey for a long time would be agreeing with me on this, how all this happened. So here's an opportunity for all of us to know and for me to share this. So in the first stage, in the year 2000, when this journey began and organizations started making products for identity and access management, these were small companies. As it happens, whenever a new technology starts, you have new companies, new entrepreneurial ventures, they come up and they come out with new ideas and new technologies. The same thing happened in identity and access management. I have been personally friends to many of these organizations, which began from 2000 to 2004, which saw the beginning of at least about, I would say, 10 to 15 identity and access management product companies. As this area grew, the stage one happened, which is around 2004. The large organizations like IBM, Oracle, CA, in those days Novell, they started acquiring these smaller companies. It always happens in our industry that new technologies are brought by entrepreneurial companies, new ideas, and as they grow big, they get acquired by large organizations. So the same thing happened in identity and access management. So there were a lot of good number of acquisitions that happened between 2002 and 2005, 2006. And by that time, companies like IBM, companies like Oracle and all, large companies, they acquired small vendors. So what do large companies do? You must be dealing with an IBM or an Oracle or somebody for some other products. And you know that they always they try to sell a suite of products, not just one product, because that is the advantage they have because they have the scale with them. And IBM would have perhaps about 1,000 products, and Oracle would have maybe 500, 600, 700 products. And they always like to make things big. So an IBM, for example, did multiple acquisitions, and they bought a company for identity provisioning, they bought a company for single sign-on, they bought a company for web access management, they bought a company for what we call SIEM as a technology. Later on, they bought many companies for authentication. So they would have acquired close to 10 companies to do full identity and access management. Now, what is the problem there? The problem is all of them are different technologies. They came from different organizations and they had different interfaces. They even had different philosophies. Some of them were distributed based on distributed identity management. Some were based on, what we call focused, centralized identity and access management. They were all based, different kinds of code bases were there. So the complexity begins right there, that you've got different technologies that you acquired over a period of time. And all these technologies inherently are different in the way they have been constituted, so they don't speak to each other. Not only this makes the initial part difficult, but it also makes the implementation and support difficult. So you're not when you talk of an IBM or an Oracle, you are not implementing one technology, even though they may call it identity and access management. But inside the hood, there are 6 different technologies that they're dealing with, which you won't see because they have managed to put one single user interface, and that's what you see. But deep inside, there are 6 different or 5 different technologies. And that makes the implementation very expensive, very complicated, sometimes endless. So this led to the first stage, which I would say the first generation of IAM products came. It was from 2000 to 2006, 2007, where identity and access management was only for a chosen few, because such complexity, how many companies can handle? How many companies can make so much of investment? And how many companies can support? So there were a lot of failures because of this. Now let's see what happened next. So stage 2, that stage 1 or generation 1 gave rise to generation 2, which started somewhere around 2007. And this was, I call it the age of specialized camps. Now, what do I mean by that? By this time, all the technologies like access management, identity administration, identity governance, privilege access management, all these technologies became more mature, they became more deep, and therefore different companies started building only one product. So many of you must be using privilege access management. So PAM, as it is known, or PIM, it by itself is a different technology. So that became a PAM camp. And there are vendors which just specialize, like CyberArk or Thycotic, many others. They specialize only in one technology called privilege access management. Then in 2007, there are 2 companies that started access identity governance. These companies were called Avexa and SailPoint. SailPoint is still there. Avexa got acquired by RSA. So that became a new area, and companies were only specializing in identity governance. You had IBM, Oracle, and other people who had acquired other companies in identity administration. And then a fresh set of companies started doing work in access management. You might have heard names like Okta, OneLogin. You might have heard of Ping. All these companies started with access management only. So what used to be started as small companies doing separate technologies got acquired by large companies, and they tried to make it a suite, did not work so well. As these technologies became more complex and more deep, you had a new generation of companies that came who were doing only one technology at a time. So this was the stage of specialized camps, and this is a stage that is continuing even today. This is the summary. As you can see here, there are 3 kinds of companies that are there today. So the first, which are the older companies like the IBM, CA Broadcom. As you know, CA got acquired by Broadcom, Oracle, Microsoft. These guys have older technologies, and inside that they have, even though it may look like one product, there are 5 or 6 different products that are there inside. Unfortunately, these technologies are not very suited to handle the complexities and the requirements of today's customers. The requirements have changed. All of us know mobile devices are becoming now so popular and so common, and people are trying to access everything through the mobile devices. We in Ilantus are working with some microfinance companies where people are going to villages to collect, the loans or grant loans, and they don't even have proper network. So they cannot keep in touch with the central server in the head office of the microservices microfinance company, so that they can be authenticated. So if you can't authenticate, you cannot work. You cannot pull any data from those centralized applications. Because of the coming in or popularity of mobile applications and mobile devices being used to do access management, a completely different kind of identity and access management is required today. Cloud is another very big example. With cloud coming in, now the way applications get handled is very, very different. You know, we used to talk about perimeter security at one point in time. Some of us still talk about today. The new, if you listen to Gartner, if you listen to Forrester, if you listen to many of the very, very knowledgeable professionals in IT in the US today, the common statement they will make is the identity is the new perimeter. So the perimeter security, at one point in time, you had a firewall and you had a network and your perimeter was that. But today, people are going all over the world. People are logging in from different devices and different time zones. So wherever they go and log in from becomes a part of the network. So now they say that identity is the new perimeter. So wherever my identity goes, that becomes a part of the perimeter of that company. So it's virtually endless, right? And in that kind of a situation, the older technologies are not able to provide solutions. The middle-aged companies like Okta, OneLogin, very good example is SailPoint. All these companies, they came in around, between 2007 and 2012, and they specialized in one particular product. So like Okta specializes in access management. Identity IQ is a product of SailPoint, which specializes in identity governance and administration, and so on and so forth. So none of them can give a full solution. They can only give part of the solution, right? So that's the second generation companies. Now, there is a third generation company also that came, which is doing exactly the same thing as the middle-aged companies, but many of them are in the cloud. That's the difference between the middle-aged and the younger guys, right? That they have both. They are specializing in one part of identity management, and they also are in the cloud. So they are offering cloud identity as a service from the cloud. So this is what exists so far, and this is how the world looks like today. As you can see very clearly here, none of this is good enough as an ideal solution. So let's look at, what could an ideal solution be like? So what is really needed is convergence, what I would call an MS Office for identity and access management. What I mean by this is that if there was a technology, if there was a way that one single product can take care of all the issues of identity and access management, it could do access management, it could authentication, single sign-on, password management, adaptive authentication, passwordless authentication. And then on top of that, it could do identity administration, which is provisioning, deprovisioning to users, applications, devices. It could also do access governance, which is getting you a sense of who has access to what, who authorized that access, is that access still needed, what is the person doing with that access. Those things also could be answered. And ideally, even the privilege access could be managed by the same product, all converging into one single technology, not 5 technologies that look like one technology from the top, but inside there are 5 different technologies, right? If that could be possible, then that would deliver the ultimate simplicity. That solution should be comprehensive. Obviously, if it's delivering everything, it'll be comprehensive. It should also be flexible, where we can implement features at will. So one manufacturing company may like to start with the access management of SAP along with rest of the applications. For somebody else in a bank, what could be important is that they need to prove to the auditors or Reserve Bank of India that they have the right kind of access certification system in place. Access certification is, I'm sure you're aware of that. As access certification is about periodically recertifying access people have. Because over a period of time, what happens is these accesses do not get easily removed. So people leave, people get transferred, people get promoted, and some of their old accesses are still there in the system. And that needs to be taken away by periodically re-verifying the access people have. But that is called access certification. With that access certification, we have seen with some banks in India, Reserve Bank India is asking for a proper system on access certification. And many of the banks have started the identity and access management journey only with access certification. Some others have started it with single sign-on. So an ideal technology should be flexible, and one should be able to implement features at will. I think the third point is most important. If it is a comprehensive solution but very complex to deliver, and that is going to defeat the whole purpose. And so ideally, the technology should be comprehensive, all in one. At the same time, it should be possible to deliver it and implement it very, very easily. So these are some of the requirements of an ideal identity and access management solution, which one can, I'm calling it the MS Office for identity and access management. The other 2 points that are there are in terms of, all this is fine, but eventually in today's world, economics plays a very important role. So there's got to be a low total cost of ownership, not of just the license, but also the implementation support put together should be as low as possible. And the solution at the same time, we live in a world of changes. So the solution should also be future-proof. There's a new concept that has come called identity fabric. I will talk a little about that later. But this is a very new thought process where organizations are saying that, I'll give you an example. IoT devices are becoming quite common. So a company procures a new IoT device, a new type of IoT device. It appoints an administrator to take care of that IoT device. The IoT device, the security guy says that you need to have two-factor authentication provided for this IoT device because it is very critical, and we cannot allow hacking into that or some unauthorized access into that. So the person who is in charge of that IoT device now needs to apply two-factor authentication to it. So he should be able to ask the identity management system that I need two-factor authentication to be applied immediately to my IoT device. And the identity management system should immediately provide two-factor authentication service for that IoT device. This concept of people requesting for some identity and access service and the identity management system providing that service is called identity fabric. And the latest concepts say that your identity management system should also be deliverable as an identity fabric. These are the 5 important criteria of an ideal system in identity and access management that you need today. When we began building our 3rd generation product, we sat with Gartner. Amongst all the other analysts, we chose Gartner to talk to. And we had close to 9 long sessions with Gartner. And we asked them, what do you think is the right kind of product that the customers should have in today's world for IAM? And these are the 5 things that were told to us by Gartner. And our product, Compact Identity, was built with these 5 factors being kept in the priority for the architecture of the product. I was talking about the identity fabric. As I said, identity fabric, which is a very new concept, enables access for all from anywhere to any service. And I gave you an example of IoT two-factor authentication service, while integrating advanced approaches such as support for adaptive authentication. Now, you must have been hearing about adaptive authentication, right? Even two-factor authentication is not good enough. The authentication system should be able to learn from the experience and decide whether this person should be given access or he should be challenged one more time with some other factor for access to be granted. And that's called adaptive authentication. It essentially uses machine learning, artificial intelligence to do that. And there's a lot that is happening in the area of authentication. In fact, we just started working with a very interesting company in the US, which is in its initial stage. And there the authentication is neurological authentication. So each person's mind thinks different. And the best way to authenticate somebody is if you can connect to his mind. And then there's this interesting company has come out with a technology where it picks up signals of your thinking process itself, and based on that, it authenticates you. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of advancement is happening in technologies such as authentication. We now are bringing next month passwordless authentication. Passwordless authentication is about being able to authenticate without any password, utilizing the capabilities of your mobile device. So even if I want to log into the laptop, I should be able to do that by doing something in conjunction with my mobile device. And you must have seen, if you go to Google, that kind of passwordless authentication has become common. If you use Netflix services, you take a new television of yours, and if you wanted to enable with Netflix, or for that matter, Alexa, Amazon, you will need to authenticate through your mobile device. So that is a passwordless authentication and much safer. So we are working on all those technologies. We have many of those, and we are bringing in one by one some of the most sophisticated authentication technologies. So in an identity fabric, essentially, it should have minimum number of products, and it should also be risk aware. Now, this is a very new requirement from identity and access management systems. Think about it. No matter which technology you have in your company, you may have ERP, you may have different devices, you may have a lot of security technologies. At an average, a corporate company has got about 7 to 8 security products. All these products have to be accessed by somebody or a set of people. And to that extent, managing the identity and access of those products also is important. So in today's world, identity and access management becomes a central technology that manages the identity and access for everything that you have in the organization. So this is just an example of the identity fabric. You need access management, as I said, for everything, even for the dark web, deep web. The time context needs to be applied. So our product, for example, next month we will have the geography and velocity based authentication. So what it means is that if I'm sitting in Bangalore and logging in right now, after 1 hour I log in from Dubai, the system should be able to compute whether this is possible or not. Even with the fastest planes that I may have access to, is it possible for somebody to go from Bangalore to Dubai in 1 hour? And the authentication system will calculate that, and it will say, no, it is not possible. Therefore, there is something fishy going on in this particular access. And so we do need to either challenge it with another authentication or block the access, because definitely there's something fishy out here. So that all those kinds of authentication are there. Automatic access approval and many other things that you see here are examples of access management on the identity fabric. Compact identity makes it all possible. This is today the only technology in the world which does all these things that we talked about. It is an all-in-one solution, first of all. It has got access management, identity administration, governance, and PAM, all inside one single code base. No single product, no other product in the world has that. Everybody is trying to put different products, somehow integrate it, and show it as something on top as one singularity. But there is nothing like compact identity today. Application connectors. It is very important not to leave out anything in the organization. A corporate solution should cover all the applications, all the devices, and this is what is possible through compact identity. We are also building and bringing out early next year a risk engine, which will make it possible for you to assign risks to various accesses. And then if somebody is trying to access, to assess the risk that is there, set up a policy as to what risk is acceptable to you, what risk is not acceptable to you, and the system would work accordingly. We have global partners also, like the EY, Deloitte, Pricewater, and so on. But what we have found, frankly, very, very effective is to have local, regional partners like Raksha, who understands their customers much more deeply than larger organizations many a times who have, it's exactly like multinationals versus focused niche organizations. We have local expertise across the world. Our licenses are available in perpetual mode, cloud, and as a service. And the deployment can be on-premise, public, or private cloud, whatever customers are comfortable with. We are seeing worldwide, we are seeing a major preference now for the cloud. Interestingly enough, Reserve Bank of India, even for the banks, just after the recent HDFC disaster, you might have read it in the newspapers that Reserve Bank of India has disallowed HDFC to sell more credit cards till such time they can ensure that there'll be no downtimes of the type that has been happening. And so the banks went back to RBI and said that we cannot do that with on-premise systems because there are limitations to what we can do. It is not stretchable. If the load increases, it takes us 6 months to put more servers and other things in place to be able to attend to that load. And there will be gaps in which all these downtimes will happen. So RBI said, go ahead, use cloud as long as the data is kept inside the country. Do whatever technology you want, but fix the problem, right? So with that, now cloud is acceptable even in banks. So our product, Compact Identity, works on any of these deployment models. I just wanted to give you a sense of what has been the history of identity and access management, why things became so complex, and how technology like Compact Identity makes it much, much easier for you to attain everything that you want to in identity and access management. With that, we will open questions.
Thank you so much for the insightful session. I've got a question on, somebody has texted. What are your thoughts on the consumer identity? That is the question, actually.
That's a very, very good question. Thanks for asking. So consumer identity and access management, which is also called CIAM, is one of the very hot technologies now, because everything that I talked about for the workforce identity and access management is also applicable to consumers, because consumers are also accessing corporate data. They also need to be registered. It may not be in Active Directory, but somewhere their records also need to be, the credentials need to be kept, and their credential needs to be created, and they have to be given access. So the same rules apply, though in a different way for the consumers as well. Just to tell you, in Ilantus, we already support all the foundation features of consumer identity and access management, which includes user registration, social login. That means you can log in through Facebook account by using Facebook account or Salesforce account or whatever. So that's supported. Large databases, integration to CRM engines, all those are already supported, and we are bringing many more features of CIM inside the same product. Again, so our philosophy is that one product is all that you need, whether it is workforce identity or consumer identity and access. So it's a very critical area. Thanks for talking about that, and we do provide that solution as well.
Thank you. The next question is series of question. I will ask what you haven't answered earlier. Like, do you have support for passwordless authentication? And is RBI, does it help us in meeting RBI regulation? Is this product RBI compliant? This is one more question people have asked.
So there are two questions here. First, about the passwordless authentication. Yes, we can demonstrate and show it to you even now. Talking about RBI compliance, yes. In fact, if there is one product or company which has done maximum work on RBI compliance, it is Ilantus today. Working with several banks, we have got an RBI compliance package. All the reports that RBI wants to see, many of the features that RBI wants to get implemented. I'll give you an example. If you do, RBI says that all your users should log in from one single place. They should not be for different applications. They go to the web URL and log in from there. All their logins should be captured from one place, and that's possible only in single sign-on. Not only that, if somebody tries to go and try to directly log in, going onto an application URL and clicking and putting the password, that should not be accepted. He should be redirected back to the single sign-on system so that all the logins are captured from one single place. We support it. So yes, the answer is we do have very, very large scale compliance to RBI, and even package of solution and reports and all that for RBI compliance.
The next question would be like, does Ilantus solution support native directory services?
Very good question again. Yes, we do support native directory services. So the system not only supports Active Directory, but it could be a virtual directory, it could be an SAP directory. So all those directories also we support. And we also very shortly will be supporting login to the native login. That means when you open your laptop, the initial login that you do, that also, the authentication to that also would be available through Compact Identity. Yes, we do.
You have answered, but just to want to hear from you, like what about integration with SAP? You earlier mentioned with the popular CRM systems, you have a solution for this, but still to answer to that particular question, if you can answer.
So interestingly, our single sign-on is, we have got 3 international patents at this point in time. Single sign-on solutions in general are able to support only web applications and cloud applications. They find it difficult to support applications like SAP, which are more what we call thick client applications. Ilantus supports thick client applications also. We have ready connectors for SAP, both for single sign-on as well as for the provisioning and deprovisioning. So we do provide out-of-box connectors for these applications like SAP also.
Thank you so much. We are coming to the end of the session. Any final thoughts you want to tell the audience, Binod? Like final thoughts on how we can take the journey, or some final wrap-up thing, if you want to say, you can say.
My final thoughts are that, in India, we are globalizing. The issues that we have are no different from what customers, what user organizations in other countries have, whether it's US or Europe or what. The advantage that we have is that we can straight away go to generation 4 technology rather than doing the journey from generation 1 to 4. That journey has been done by many other organizations in the US and the European context. We have these things available today, and we have it available in a far more cost-effective manner and simple to implement. The importance of identity and access management is not because it's a security technology anymore. Identity and access management has now become what we call a basic infrastructure piece. So if you look at large number of US customers or European customers, like they have implemented, they have got their servers and laptops and operating systems and databases. They also have an identity layer as a part of an infrastructure, not as a part of security. Because once you have the basic IT infrastructure, which includes the networks and the servers and the operating system and the databases and the applications, the next thing that you need to have is you got to connect all of them through a seamless access system. And that is what identity and access management provides. So it is now being seen as a part of infrastructure management, not as a part of security. Of course, it is security, but in that sense, it is fundamental to an organization, a forward-looking organization. It is not one of the options, but it is something which is a must. And that's exactly what you can see in the market growth of identity and access management. I don't know whether you are aware, but identity and access management is one of the 3 fastest growing technologies in the world within the IT domain. And you can see the reason for it, because it's becoming a part of infrastructure and therefore it's unavoidable anymore. So if you want to not only avoid security violations, but if you want to your organization infrastructure to be given access in a very seamless and smooth manner, which is easy to handle, which has got excellent user experience for all your users, which has got great security control in terms of the best authentication systems, and which also can give you a complete compliance for access administration and the governance, then identity and access management system is a must.
Thank you so much. One more final question, actually. Like, they are a startup company, and how should they start the journey? It's purely built on cloud, and they are all working from offices. They don't have a physical office. How do they start? Like, they understand the importance of identity and access management. What is their how their journey should be?
They are in an ideal situation to have an IAM, and for them, it's even more important to have an IAM system because they have got everything virtual. They've got virtual users, there's no office, everything is in the cloud. And in that kind of a situation, security and identity management becomes even more important. And it's easier to implement in their case because they don't have complexity of multiple hybrid environments and all that. So not only it is very important for them to have it, but also it's easy for them to have it.
Thank you. We come to the end of the session. Wishing you all a very happy New Year and happy Christmas. Thank you, Mr. Binod, for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity.